we can start.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. Warm welcome to you and everybody that's online. My name is Crispin, and I'm really looking forward, Samkelo, to welcome you to the conversation and to get you through your leadership journey with us. So, folks, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's really great to see so many of you on the call. And Samkelo, very warm welcome to you as well. Thank you very, very much. I just want to say hello to everybody and introduce yourself quickly, please.
Thanks, Crispin. Goeienaand. Sanibonani. Inkosi mazithambe izixaka zivumile. Good evening, everyone. We're looking forward to this session to share and discuss a journey navigating management to leadership. Please feel free to put questions in the chat box as well. Thank you. Yeah.
So, folks, when we met a couple of weeks ago,
Yes.
and I asked you if you were keen, you jumped at it immediately.
Yeah.
And I didn't even ask you for the topic. You just said, I want to tell the story about my navigation from management to leadership. So what about that was important for you, and why did that come up as an important topic for you?
Yeah, you're right. It came up because it's something that I've been reflecting upon, and more so now that I'm an MD of my own company, and I'm able to track and look my journey, my career, where I was a manager, I was an executive, and I've been grappling with which one works best, which one I'm more aligned to, whether being a manager or being a leader. So I've been reflecting on that, but also reflecting on people that I have reported to, and asking myself, what was their style? Were they more of managers or were they more of leaders? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how would you make that distinction for you? As I know that you mentioned now that you had role models and folk that you looked up to that had more of a management style, and there were others that had more of a leadership style.
Yeah, I think from the onset, it's very important that in this discussion we are saying it's a question of that you are either a manager or you are a leader. I remain fully convinced that certain situations require management. When a new employee starts, there's a reason the Russian management, employment, e.g., job description, e.g., how much is he or she going to be paid? That's management. That's what Dave Ulrich will call hygiene factors. However, I'm also convinced that there are times where we require leadership as well. So for me, I make a clear distinction, and I'm not saying one is better than the other, but if I reflect, and I really want to be honest today, I'm leaning more, I'm looking at people who've led two. I'm finding out that those who led me, one, they got the most out of me. Why? Because they communicated. Why? Because I existed. Those who managed me, I felt mostly their power. I felt mostly their control. And also there was this constant fear. If you don't give me this report, if you don't do this, yeah. So that's where I make the distinction for me.
Tell me more about fear, please, and power in this description.
So where there was fear and where there was power, I was made to feel I am your boss, I am your manager. And I want, if this is not done, there will be consequences. And those consequences could either be disciplinary, or those consequences in some instances could mean when we do our next performance review, which is linked to salary increase, you will not be the 8%, you'll be getting the 3%. It was not said like that, but it was implied. Whereas when I was dealing with leadership, if something went wrong, there was this question, help me to understand what went wrong, Samkelo. Help me to understand what would you do differently. And there was also this other important critical question. So the third one is, for you to improve what you are doing, Samkelo, what do you need from me? Can you see now the leader? The leader is saying, let's sit here together. Help me to understand what went wrong. Help me to understand what would you do differently. Then the leader is saying, oh, by the way, from me, what tools, what clarity, What empowerment do you need from me? And that's why I was more aligned with the leader. The manager would say, you messed up, you fix this, let's not walk this bridge again, please, or there will be consequences.
What did you find, and it's a double-barreled question, what did you find in the transition, in your own thinking and in your own heart from the control, authoritative manager to the more liberating, empowering leader, as I'm hearing you describe it? What in that transition did you find the most liberating?
I think whenever I was dealing with the manager, I got the sense that I was always an employee with an employee number. And words like staff count and head count were used. And there's nothing wrong with those words, but I never had an identity with the manager. I was part of the staff, I was part of the team. What has been unique about the leader, I had my unique identity. I was Samkelo, I had a surname called Blom. I had aspirations and I wanted growth as well. And I was always engaged with the leader. With the manager, there were intervals to engage. I will see you once a month. I will meet you at the performance review. And also I find that with the manager, our interactions were always very transactional. Right, why are we here? We discuss 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it, we are done, thank you. See, whereas with the leader is there, before we start, how are you doing? Where are you in your work? What are you finding challenging in your work? How is family, Samkelo? And your studies, and where do you, so there was that engagement, and that was liberating for me. If a manager ever ventured to become a leader, and then he or she asked the leadership question, my immediate reaction is, okay, what's going on now here? Why are you asking? Did you read the latest book on how to take care of staff? Are you now trying to play that game? Because ever since I've known you, your character, your behavior, the way you've managed me has been clearly transactional. Get the work done, let's move on.
But in our preparation and in our earlier conversations around this topic, and we'll get to how you're applying that in your own company at the moment, in your own business with your team and with your clients a little later. You used words of authenticity. You used transparency. You used concepts that leadership use about acknowledging that you don't necessarily always know, always have the answers. Just at a really practical level, how do you engage as a leader at the moment around transparency and always knowing what the future holds or what the solution to a particular problem or challenge?
Yeah, I think, and it's a very good question, and you are right. As we're preparing, we did reference those. I think it's important, Crispin, to be upfront and honest, is in that even now in my own journey of leadership, I still don't get it right. And I think there are people who are listening, who are watching this or will watch this in future. It's important to first come to a place to say, in my leadership journey, there will be moments or times when I will not get it right. And now to answer your question, I always reference how I was managed, but also how I was led. Then then the biggest question is, knowing both scenarios, which one do you want to do now? And that's why hence I began by saying, I'm leaning more to the leadership one. So right now, whenever I dealt with a manager, and I'm not saying all managers are like that. And once again, for those of you who just joined later, it's not a question of either or. There are scenarios that require management. If there's a fire in the building, somebody must make a decision. Let us all exit. It's not a room. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we seem to have come across a fire. There are some flames that are coming through the window. If you would not mind to choose, can we please all exit the building and go out? So for me, I'm not saying one is better than the others. But if I look in my own leadership, if I look into my own journey, a manager is always perfect. A manager was always right. A manager always had the last say. Managers, they try to be transparent, but the data, the insight that is shared with you is always limited. What I admire about the leader is able to say in a meeting, or one-on-one is to say, I don't know. I apologize. I made a mistake. A leader is able to ask you, what do you think about this? But also a leader is able to say, to be honest with you, I'm also struggling with this. And the leader is able to say to you, financially, we are not doing very well, and let you make that decision. There's a lot of sharing, there's a lot of transparency, and also a leader's word is not always the last word. A leader allows you to reflect, a leader allows you to comment as well. And I know some people might say that all sounds fluffy and airy-fairy. What I like about the leader, he or she engages me. A leader also, I'm sitting with a person, I can feel that he or she also does not also have the answers as well. What are the managers? Wow, we are perfect today. Whenever I'm here, I'm saying, okay, shucks, this person knows everything. So there's no room for error with the manager. That's why I'm scared to make mistakes, because with the manager, mistakes are not allowed, and mistakes must be dealt with here.
Let's continue the conversation on mistakes now that you've introduced it. And thank you for acknowledging that in your leadership journey, you have made mistakes. You're not the perfect leader. You've made some errors in the past potentially, and have had great successes as a leader. Share some of that with us, please. Some of your successes, victories, if you like, and lessons learned. And if we would, if you had a week now, you probably would.
I think for me, one of the biggest successes I've had as a leader is the ability to listen. And sometimes listening to data that I might not necessarily agree with about me. Secondly, another thing I appreciate about leadership that I've learned is the ability to see people for who they are, not what the company wants them to be. And another great success in terms of my own leadership journey is part of being a leader is the understanding that people are not going to stay in this organization forever. And it's okay to let them go. So this mentality, this tendency that I must stay for 2 to 3 years or 5 years is not applicable. That when people have fulfilled their role and their goals and their objectives, it's okay to move on. And as leader, I must reach a stage where I can let go of those. I'm going to go back and trace my management. Because we have to ask ourselves, does Samkelo begin to be a manager or a leader when he arrived in UCT in 1999? Or does Samkelo become a leader or a manager when he works in this company and gets exposed to this book, Good to Great, or learns about Jeff Bezos or whoever? I've actually reflected and thought to myself, my leadership journey begins when I grew up in the hills and the valleys of the Eastern Cape, when I saw management being role-played in front of me, first of all at home, when I saw the authority and control of teachers at school, when I saw what was happening in my township as well. And I think without me being aware, I was being fashioned and formed in terms of management. That is why then I struggled then to shift from management into leadership. Even to this day, I still watch myself and see residues of management in me. But now what is nice, I'm now aware. In the past, I was not aware. Yes, to your question,
Please try again later.
I still need to improve more.
Help me understand that in a practical way, please. So, are you playing management and leadership as two paradoxes? As I don't want to be a manager anymore, or are you? How are you balancing that? If that's the question,
Yeah. So for me, the residue is: did I react or did I respond? So in this, when I was given this data, or when we were faced with this situation, did I react? Because managers are big on reaction, or did I respond? Then the other one, was this about my ego, or was this about the good of the employee or the organization? And I've seen instances, shucks, this was about your ego. This was not about the good of the individual or the good of the organization, where the elements of power in this kind of discussion. So I mean, I shared with you a practical example. When I had managers, famous words, they would say, can you please come and see me in my office? if as managers we can imagine what a torture it is to the employee when we say, can you come and see me to the office? I remember working in one organization, the employees used to say, yo, that walk from your office, walking to the passage of your, it's like dead men walking. So, but and even now, as I'm leading now, I walk to people. I literally walk to their desk, I walk to their office and say, well, I've been in situations where I go, shucks, yeah, I wonder why does he want to see me? You know, so now practically one of the things I'm sharing with you is I now go and say, can we talk about this or what happened here? Because I know coming to my office is like, oh God, the backfall of the crowd.
We're circling back to fear again in a way, and the power that people have over other individuals to either instill fear or to empower and enhance and grow. I'd like to go back to the earlier question around your earlier life, growing up, the role models you had, teachers, parents, managers in the world of work and elsewhere. Was there a pivotal moment or a particular incident or something that triggered you saying, no, there must be a different, a better way of engaging and leading people?
I don't think there's one incident. I think it's quite a mirror of other things, because as I grew up, I saw authority, I saw fear. And remember, we grew up in an apartheid state where you had police. So control and fear was the way to, and if you don't do it, we'll shambok or we'll shoot you. And that also at home as well. But when I started working and I worked in various organizations, I had managers, but also I had leaders as well. But now as my career was growing, I was becoming a manager, I was becoming a leader, I was becoming a head of a department. I began to ask myself, okay, you've seen it done before you, and we must never underestimate some of the lessons that we learn without us being aware that we are learning those lessons. I think sometimes we think learning, there are lessons that we've learned passively, and yet we still carry those lessons with us right now. Some of us are parenting the same way that we observed parenting, without even thinking that, shucks, am I replaying a cassette that was done to me? So there are lessons that I had learned. So now when I became a manager, when I became a head, there was a question, are you gonna play the same cassette that you have experienced? And if you're gonna do it differently, how differently is it gonna be? And for me, one of the things that became very abundantly clear is let people know where you are and how you feel. 2, it's okay to make mistakes. The fact that you've made a mistake, you've made an error of judgment, you've forgotten. I mean, I'll share personal experience. One of my best CEOs, he took me around, showed me the whole company, flew with me with Joburg, and then to Joburg. And then I remember sitting with him back in Cape Town, and he says to me, of all the lessons I can ever teach you, Samkelo, I can never teach you integrity. Sure, that went very hard on me. And that was the most powerful. He said, of all the things I could ever teach you, I could never teach you integrity, principle. Leaders always teach you the principle. Managers always want to micromanage you. And then I had an incident about a year working in the same company where I disclosed salary data to people that were not supposed to see it inadvertently via email. And I'll never forget when I had done it, I stood up from my office, I walked the CEO, and I said, this is what I have just done. And I was unaware. And he said, look, it has happened now. I admire that you've come to my office. Let it please not happen again. But if you had to ask me, what made you stand up, immediately go to him? Because in a fear organization where I was being managed, the next default that would be hide, prevent, CYA, absolve yourself, you know. For me, it was of all the things I could ever teach you, I could never teach you, I can never teach you integrity. Yeah.
And then at one point, you stepped into your own organization. You gave birth and created Nomato Consulting. You stepped into entrepreneurship. You stepped into an unknown space. How did your journey prepare you for that? And what was for you the driving vision purpose behind that transition into entrepreneurship and from there into CEO of your own company?
Yeah, I think 21 years in corporate and having done HR and having done training and having done transformation, having been to business school. And I mean, I was fortunate in my previous role. I sat in management accounts meeting every month. I hadn't done accounting, you know. For 4 years, I sat and I learned a lot about the business of business and how to make money, net profit, EBITDA, you know, so earnings before interest, tax, and amortization. Now, for a township boy to remember that, that's amazing, you know. So that already gave me an idea. But you asked the question, how did that prepare you? And to be honest, I always say to my friends, there is nothing in my education, there is nothing in my working life that could have prepared me for the life of entrepreneurship. And one thing I've become aware is that being an employee made me dependent. Being an employee made my mind to sleep. Entrepreneurship has forced me to think on my own. It has forced me to come up with solutions on my own. And the journey to entrepreneurship was not easy for me. I love the part of I love the part of executive search for Black talent. But now, when you run a business and it grows, you then start having people reporting to you. You then start having associates who want decisions to you. Then the issues come up. Are you going to manage these people? Are you going to lead these people? Yes, you can do the consulting, you can do the SLA, you can do the business development, which is great. You can do profit margins for your business, but there are men and women now who report to you. What are the values of your organization? How are you going to interact? And that, again, that's where the challenge came is, are you going to be more of a manager or be more of a leader? And I didn't always get it right. And probably I still would not always get it right, but I'm also learning. I've been fortunate to have men and women working in my team who afforded me feedback. I can think of people who give me feedback about how I do things, and I appreciate that as well. Yeah.
So talk to me about your values, please. As a person, firstly, a dad, a family person, entrepreneur, a leader. Values, the role of values, and how values infused into what it is and how you do what you do, and the role of values.
My sense is that my understanding is that values is not something we write, words like integrity and respect. The biggest challenge around values is how we live those values. Being an African boy, that I'm not Samkelo, I'm part of a village. Whatever I do or I don't do, it impacts other people. So I'm always conscious of myself, my thoughts and action. I'm fully aware that my success is truly success in that it benefits other people. Whereas for some people, their success is their individual success. And that's something that I hold very dear to me is everything I do, how has it helped or impacted somebody to become better? And that's something that I hold very dear to me. This is why even at Nomato Consulting, the two most toughest values for me that we have as a business is the value of relationship building, how we relate with clients, how we relate with candidates. And then the most one that always crucifies me every day is being authentic. I mean, this week, I had to write a personal email to staff for the first time, telling them how we're doing it as a business, telling them how we've been in the first quarter, telling them what have been our challenges. And I actually said to them, I've never written an email like this, but I've reached a stage where I feel I have to be transparent and what this means as well. And I wrote that email very early in the morning, and I felt a sense of relief because I had shared with staff where we are, how this speaks to our values, and also how challenging this might be for me as well. So values are very critical. And for me, the true measure of values is how do we live them? Somebody said it very well. When something goes wrong in the business or the organization, always ask yourself, which part of your values are you going to use to try and resolve that? Are we going to go to the manual? Are we going to go to the HR policy? Or what value does this speak to you? Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear what the feedback was on that decision of yours to make that available to your staff.
So sharing and
sorry,
no, it's okay. No, sharing, no, it's okay. I mean, this is an authentic discussion, so please don't apologize for asking those questions. So one person responded by email, appreciated it, and then also the person said, I'm now aware of where we are. I'm also gonna pull up. The other person did not respond, was silent. I'm not saying anything, but people will say, but why did other one not respond? Because they're still digesting. So we can't fault a person because we must move away from this hype from other worlds where nobody responded. I'm saying, no, other people, they've had the feedback, they've got the data. Can we please afford them an opportunity to reflect and digest that data? And they might come back to us 3 weeks or 3 months from now because they still need to digest that data. So we can't say, oh, look, 10 responded, 1 didn't. Say, even the one who was silent, he or she is still mulling the feedback here.
And saying something through their silence potentially.
Yeah, exactly. Or also they could be wanting to ask questions, but not sure how to ask that questions as well. I mean, I remember I had a meeting up last year with staff members, and I just shared with them something that we had to do to deal with the candidate and the client. And one of our staff members, he actually left the room and went to drink water in the middle of the meeting. And he came back, and the following day, he then says to me, I have never seen a leader being so transparent about his own failures. You shocked me when you did that. You shocked me when you spoke about your own failures. So I couldn't hold myself. For me, it was part of my own authenticity journey. And I mean, I just don't want to put a mask. I don't want to live a life like, okay, what will they think of me? What movie must I act now? Must I think that I don't want, yeah, it becomes too heavy for me.
Just take us through that again, because it is an incredible, powerful story of how you actually were vulnerable, if I may use that word. Are there other examples where you've actually gone out on a limb in your leadership role and have had similar experiences and feedback from either clients and or staff?
I think whenever I have a meeting with staff, if we want to discuss about an issue, that's why I'm more aligned to leadership. And I'm not saying there are not times where I've had to make a decision. I've had to make tough management decisions, which I knew that if I don't make those decisions, we wouldn't have a business, we wouldn't have a company. Yeah, I've had to. And again, I keep on emphasizing that it's not a question of either or. For me, it's about what is the situation, what is the scenario. So with staff, I always say, we can't discuss this particular issue, but how are you doing? I always put the person first. And then even at the end, how do you feel? How do you feel about this? And going back to your question, we've got one client who are in financial services. And I remember going to them in December because we've been doing some work for them and we're not finding the black talent that they were looking for. And I remember walking to their offices and I remember saying to the head of talent and I said, oh, we've been doing this game and we seem not to be cracking it. And the person said, wow, I appreciate what you've just done now. And they said, as a business, culture for us is very important. So you might be giving us the right CVs, the right candidates, but understanding our culture, being performance driven. I mean, I said that as shucks. I was so focused on the CV, the candidate, the MBA, the CA, and now I'm learning that it's not about the person, but it's also, will they be able to navigate that culture as well? That was a very amazing feedback for me. But last month ago, we're busy doing a role for one of our clients who are in energy. And I remember talking to the manager who's the head of HR. And I said to her, we've been doing this role for you. We've given you these candidates. What did you do wrong? And I remember the first thing she said, thank you for asking that question, Samkelo. Because we don't normally get that question for people to put talent for. And she went on to say, there are certain parts when you were recruiting for us that I had expected your organization to pick them up, not for me to pick them up. And I'm giving you this feedback as part of your own development. There are parts that you did very well. And so, I mean, as she was talking, I thought to myself, shucks, how many times do we get clients giving us feedback? And actually I told her, I said, I appreciate this feedback. And then just before I say goodbye, I say, oh, by the way, there's another role that we have that we would like you to go and help us with. I thought, shucks. We're being, look, okay, we didn't do so well here. We've got the feedback, and now we're given a chance to what? To headhunt for another role. And for that role, we're not even invoiced for that role. Why? Because I feel like the learning and the insights we've got from the clients, they are unbelievable. I'm learning that when you are open, when you are humble, when you come with an attitude that says, I'm prepared to learn, I don't always get it right. People are eager and willing to give you feedback. In the event that they give you feedback, your posture, your listening ability, your how you come across when you get that feedback, where you don't say, oh no, you got us wrong here, or you did this wrong, that doesn't work. Because when you get feedback, it's not only getting the feedback, it's what happens when you get that feedback. And in my journey, Crispin, in the work that I do in diversity, inclusion, and belonging, I don't always get the best feedback. And it's important I sit and I listen. And sometimes I think to myself, I didn't see that one coming. I mean, we've just been doing a program now for one of our major clients that we're training their leaders on inclusive leadership. This afternoon, I'm looking at the feedback from the candidates. I mean, one candidate wrote feedback. It's not a kosher feedback. I'm going to take that same feedback, send it to the senior management and say, this candidate has given us feedback about Nomatu. Please, can we engage on this feedback? What can we do differently? Because we've never received this kind of feedback. So what is the learning? And I'm not excusing that feedback. I'm saying, no, this is feedback, don't put on us.
So how do you deal with criticism? How do you deal with people who give you that kind of really, if I'm assuming correctly, negative feedback? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, Crispin is it's tough to take feedback. It's really tough. And when people give you insights and feedback about you or the work that you do, it's not easy. So I'm not going to sit here and say I've got an armor, I've got a 5-point plan on how to take feedback. It's tough. I mean, sometimes it can go below, sometimes it can really hit you. I mean, I've had weekends where I've processed the feedback. And sometimes some of the feedback are areas that you think you have progressed. So what do I mean? If somebody gives you feedback around your ability to listen or to process or to do something, you thought, shucks, I thought I graduated from this school and the song was sung saying, Gaudia Moose, I've even had the degree put on me, with magna cum laude. So why are we going back to grade 10 again, So you have to sit there and say, shucks, clearly there are certain areas of this part that we have not progressed. So I like to digest feedback and I like to reflect feedback. Then I always look for the pattern. Did somebody give me feedback in one area of my life? Did I hear the same feedback with different words in another area? But I can draw in the thread and the pattern. Then they are all into something. Because I'm picking up the same pattern. Somebody is saying, I don't feel that you understood me here. And then somebody else says the same thing, but using different scenario. So there's a pattern. So what is the theme that's coming up? What's the pattern that's coming up?
So help me link that back then to your journey of transition, if you the words we used, from a manager role into a leader role. I'm hearing you really saying that a key part of that learning, that journey, and that self-awareness was actually preparing yourself up for feedback, which then connects back into the whole reality of being transparent and vulnerable.
Yeah, it's spot on. And for me, that journey is that I like Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. It's about evolving. It's about when you go to a mall, they always have this yellow thing that says work in progress when they're busy cleaning the floor. I always say, I am that work in progress. There are still parts of my leadership, decision-making, strategy, how I interact with people that are still work in progress. And part of that being work in progress, I might make 10 steps forward and still make 4 steps backwards. That's okay. Samkelo is evolving. Samkelo is evolving. It's okay. Honestly, it's okay. Doesn't mean that I'm a failure or I'm a default in some factory in Japan. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. Yeah. As long as I've learned, as long as I've got an insight, I feel much like now I'm so critically clear about management now. I can even smell management because I know I'm gonna be controlled. Someone is gonna be right. I'm gonna have to accept somebody's view or perspective. And also, I'm gonna feel a sense of fear when I'm dealing with a manager. I'm gonna feel that, I'm gonna have to fear that, am I dressed properly? Is my accent correct? Am I sitting properly? So a manager always makes you feel that, good, I'm in charge here. With a leader, a space is created. I can question a leader. I can disagree with a leader. And one thing I admire about a leader, leaders always help us to reach, to aspire to heights and levels that we never dreamed of.
I'm tempted to go to a question, and I'm not sure
how we're doing on time.
We're still right on time. Have you Yeah, I'm really. Have you been in a situation where a client has demonstrated management behaviors, and you, as the service provider, as the service provider to that client, have felt yourself in this space of control and fear and direction?
There have been those scenarios, but for me, what I do in terms of instead of making it a client problem, I get this unbelievable. I'm dealing with a client overseas, and the person likes to control and take over. But for me, I'm enjoying it because I'm getting a chance to see, oh shucks, this is how I use to come across. Instead of making it about that client, so I'm saying like, shucks. So there must be silence when the manager is talking. Shucks, in terms of the agenda, we must go to what the manager wants. And shucks, if the manager is 7 minutes late on an MS Team or Zoom call, all of us, we must understand it because the manager is back to back. We must understand, we must accept it. But if we are late, words will be used. Can people please be professional? These meetings were set up a long time ago.
Samkelo, a few last questions, if I may. And I may interpret this incorrectly, so happy to be guided. That management is hard and gets results and gets things done. That leadership, use the words areas warm and fuzzy. And if I was the CEO and I said to you, the world is completely confusing out there. It's very disruptive. I have so many pressures on me, my board, my shareholders, my staff, my suppliers, etc. I've got to get things done. And the only way of doing that is with being clear on goals, hard on performance, driving, because in the absence of that, we may not survive. What would your response to that, CEO, be?
We must not in any stage make the assumption that there are no targets either for the manager or for the leader. We have to do measures and acquisitions. We have to increase operating profit. We have to grow the market. We have to be agile. Both the manager and the leader have got the same kind of challenge. Somebody, when they were describing power, they said power is like a water in the river. And that water, that's why I use the word navigating, and that water can do a lot of damage if it does not go proper, a lot of soil erosion. So I guess the trick is, how am I going to communicate? How am I going to execute? How am I going to measure the success to those targets of making operating profit, increasing shareholder value by this debt to equity ratio and all those things? For me, is how do you run staff meetings? And for me, what I find about leaders are able to do the hard stuff. They are able to have the uncomfortable conversation to say, great as you are, amazing as you are as an employee, maybe you've risked your journey in this organization. Maybe this is, and I'm aware that there's labor relations and all of that other stuff. Maybe this is not where you need to be. And hence I always say, leaders can do the uncomfortable discussions. Whether the managers, okay, what does the rule say? What does the policy say? How can we retrench? How much can we pay to exit them? Leaders are able to have the uncomfortable conversations with staff around performance. And in fact, leaders don't shy away from those discussions and say, let's talk about this. I'm not happy. If I am being led, I will hear from my boss, from my leader, how my performance is. If I'm being managed, everyone around me will know that I'm not performing very well. At the bar, at the airport lounge, the wife of the boss will know that there's a poor performer called Samkelo. But if I'm being led, I will know about it. If I'm being managed, I'll have to wait for 6 months performance review in June or whatever the period might be and hear what my actions have been in the last 6 months. If I'm being led on month 1, on month 2, but it's not working. We've agreed on these areas, we've agreed on these behaviors, it's not working good. So I know on month 1, I know on month 2 what I need to adjust, what I need to change. So by the time, that's what I always used to say, when I'm being led, when I'm walking to my performance review on that day, I know my score. I know my score because I'm being led. I don't have to wait for the review to know that my boss doesn't know your score for now is this. Yeah. But
there's clarity.
Yeah. Whereas if I'm being managed, it's like, okay, right, now I must fight for my score now. Now I must bring up evidence now because I'm fighting for my score, which impacts my salary increase. But if I'm being led, I know my score, I know my performance.
So two last, and then we're going to open up and get feedback and comments and from the audience. I believe that as a nation, we have a particular crisis as it relates to leadership. I'm struggling personally to see your definition of leadership in many organizations. In the public sector, general South Africa out there. I'm struggling to see authenticity, integrity, vulnerability. I'm struggling to see transparency. I'm struggling to see courageous conversations. And I don't want to elaborate further on that, but I just have a sense that I'm finding it really hard in the world out there, let's just talk South Africa, to see Samkelo's raw definition of authentic leadership. What's your message to our nation, to South Africa? You work in the space of diversity, inclusion, and something very important in the work you're doing is around belonging. And if I had to just, again, and without sounding critical or judging, I don't get a sense that we belong that comfortably in what I'm seeing. Typical leadership behaviors out there. So forgive me for sounding critical, but I think it's an important reality, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, please. Whether you agree or not, and how do we turn that, if it is true, how do we get to a space in this country of all folk in leadership roles, CEOs, heads of department, ministers of government? How do we get to authentic, real, transparent leadership in our country?
Yeah, you put me in a very challenging position, in that I feel as though I have to answer the question as though I'm Cyril Ramaphosa, the country's president, and I'm saying that in a very joking way. Yeah. And I'm not sure if you've noticed that there are no bodyguards, there's no X5 BMW next to me, so I'm not Cyril Ramaphosa. I tend to see the opposite of what you see. Given our challenges in South Africa, and there are many, whether it's education or poverty, I tend to see opportunities for real leaders to emerge. Our present crisis, whether they are energy, whether it's education or unemployment, they are asking for real leaders who are authentic to emerge. And I've seen examples in the society, also in corporate, of leaders coming up. So I appreciate, so for me, I tend to say, you know what, there is hope for our country. And it's not because I'm trying to be philosophical, but for me, there's nothing that is so good as a crisis to produce something that is positive. And I know of other countries who've gone through this and emerged. So as a people, as a nation, as a family, as individuals, we will emerge out of this. And it's gonna ask for more courage, the ability to see vision beyond chaos, the ability to see purpose beyond instability. And it's calling for men and women then to stand up and to say, that's what I want. But to your point, it's not going to be easy. Now, coming to the work I do, normally when I speak about the work I do in terms of diversity, inclusion, and belonging, my own understanding that it's a cross. It's a cross that I daily, weekly, every second I carry. Whether I'm in a traffic or whether I'm in a shop, I'm saying, hey, I'm carrying this cross of diversity. And that cross sometimes has got moments where it's a lovely cross, but sometimes it even challenges me. When somebody is making a racist joke next to Samkelo, am I going to be quiet? I mean, we're training for one of our clients, big company, and employees there who were white and disabled, they said, these are white employees, they said, we feel as though our company only values us for disability. I nearly cried. They said we are only as important only when it comes to the numbers of the, I nearly cried. I mean, I struggled in that session. I was shocked. That was hard. So for me, just to close, the diversity, inclusion, and belonging is not like a consulting. It's a daily cross that one carries in the hope that in his corner is slowly making an impact. And you've asked me about stories. Today, we're busy doing a proposal for a major client, and we've given a proposal, we emailed them. Today, around about 4 o'clock, the CFO of the company picks up the phone, he phones me. He says, can we please talk about the proposal? CFO phoning me. I would expect like another email. Thank you for this proposal. We're not happy with this price. That's courageous leadership. That's diversity. And now we're talking about the price and the work. And at the end of the call, I said to him, can I tell you something? The fact that you actually picked up the phone and phoned me, you have demonstrated leadership to me. So tonight when I sleep, there's one CFO there, there's one debit credit out there that knows how to be inclusive.
Thank you. And just for the benefit of those on the call, these questions weren't scripted and practiced before the time. They are authentic questions in the flow of the conversation. Samkelo, thank you, and thank you that you responded in the way that you did to my question around our country and our future. And I love your steer that actually there is opportunity, and that you are seeing great leadership arise in spaces and places that we always expected.
My understanding, and sorry to cut you, is that of all the countries that God could have chosen for us to be born, He chose for us to be born here in South Africa for a reason. We could have been born in Australia, in Mexico, in Guatemala, in Ontario, Canada, in Shanghai, and dare I say in Moscow, St. Petersburg as well. Even in Ukraine, Kiev, knockout. But He chose for us to be born here. And because we are South Africans, we're going to make the best of it. It's going to be tough, but it's asking for what you said. Courageous leadership.
Thank you. Yeah. So we coming to the end. It's just been awesome. Thank you so much. If I may, and then we can open up, and if there are any questions, we can field those. Last thoughts, last parting words of wisdom to our audience, and to those who will be watching this at a later stage.
You began by reminding me, you said, Samkelo, when I had asked you to indicate what topic you want to talk about, you immediately went for this topic, and we used very words with the metaphor navigating. And I was deliberate and intentional in the use of that word, because I feel moving from management to leadership is a journey. It's not like I've now arrived. And in that journey, the part cost, the food that you need, reflection. Reflection helps you in this journey. Self-awareness. The toughest work any leader has to do is working on himself or herself. And then thirdly, is being kind to self. And then in closing, my colleague, Lufu Yohane, who's also an entrepreneur, he likes to speak about the pain of leadership. Leadership is painful. It's painful because you're misunderstood, it's lonely, and you also grapple with yours. So my parting thoughts is something around reflection, because it's a journey, something around self-awareness, and then most important, being kind to self.
Beautiful, thank you. So are there questions, and do we okay, you sent them to me, so let's get them on my let's get those questions. How does one dovetail? I like this.
You do some of the word dovetail.
How does one dovetail management and leadership in a technical or specialized role where mistakes have high financial implications?
Yeah, so
that's a lovely question.
Yeah, so our friends in IT, they've got a new thing now that I like, where they call it, it's called sprint. Stand up for 5 minutes. What work are you doing? And where are you in that work? Our friends in IT Our friends of mainframe systems, software, SQL, they stand up. It's a technical environment. What are you working on? Where are you challenged? What help do you need in a team? That's technical, that are tailing in that. Our friends in finance also could do the same thing as well. It's not what we do, it's how we do it. And it's not compromising intelligence or efficiency, but it's how we do it. But engaging in the language, in the discourse and narrative that's applicable to our friends in finance or in IT at that. So what is the business risk of this decision? And what are the cost implications if we do this? Is that we're still using our financial term, but it's the how we do it. But also the most importantly, who is doing it and how are you gonna do it? So we can't walk up there tomorrow and say, I listened to Crispin and Samkelo yesterday. So from now on, I'm gonna start being authentic. You're gonna think, okay, boss, easy, boss. Have you met heroin or marijuana or anything out there? Easy, boss. Yeah, who is this? Who is this now, boss? Yeah.
So it's how you actually socialize that to the audience.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other further questions that have come through at this point? Well, so Samkelo, thank you. If I had to wrap it all up, it's just been for me, just kind of feels like I've been sitting at the feet of a wise person who's gracefully navigated through their life, has gracefully navigated through success, mistakes, failure, but at the end of the day is gracious enough to acknowledge the importance of being courageous, authentic, reflective, and that it is a journey, exactly as you said, and a year from now we'll look back on this conversation and say maybe there's another way of thinking about who we are and what we've become in our leadership roles. And so all that remains for me is to really just from Founder's Wisdom side to say thank you so much. You know, I've enjoyed engaging with you. I've enjoyed our banters around this evening and making it happen. Yeah. And I just wish you from the bottom of my heart, all of us, just success and an incredible journey of leadership forward. And please continue influencing, shaping. I want to encourage you to continue hope and that message of hope for leadership. So thank you very, very much.
Crispin, from a language spoken by the people in the hills and the valleys of the Eastern Cape, Iyabulela, Ilali, the village, thanks you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's been incredible. Thank you for joining us. Looking forward to our next session, which is in June, and it is themed around where you and I were going at some point. That is the theme around integrity and authenticity in leadership. So how do we lead in a way that is moral and has integrity in it, which I think is really topical for where we are as a country. So Samkelo, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody on the call.
Thank you, people.
And have a wonderful evening and travel safely. Thank you.